I'm Dawn Hill, host of Heart, Mind, and Purpose, a podcast where we explore what it means to live an aligned and wholehearted life. I am a professional counselor with over 25 years of experience and a deep love for meaningful conversation. I bring you honest reflections, soulful questions, and meaningful tools for managing life. Whether you're seeking clarity, connection, or simply a space to breathe, this podcast is here for you. Tune in weekly and join me on the journey.
Welcome to Heart, Mind, and Purpose, the podcast where we explore how our inner lives shape the way we love, connect, and grow. Hi, this is Paul Gramercy, producer of today's episode, where Dawn takes a closer look at something many people are feeling but may not fully understand: the difference between burnout and exhaustion. We often use those words interchangeably, but they're not the same, and knowing the difference matters. In this conversation, Dawn explores what happens in the body, mind, and nervous system when stress goes on too long, why rest sometimes helps and sometimes doesn't, and how we begin moving towards recovery with compassion instead of self-criticism. So settle in and join us for this important conversation. Now here's your host, Dawn Hill.
Welcome back to Heart, Mind, and Purpose. Today we're talking about something so many people are quietly carrying right now: feeling tired, drained, emotionally worn down, and wondering, why am I still exhausted? Maybe you've taken a weekend off, or maybe you've tried sleeping more, or maybe you've even gone on vacation, and somehow you still don't feel like yourself. And that leads to an important question: am I simply exhausted, or am I burned out? Because those two things are not actually the same. They look similar, they can feel similar, but they come from different places and they require different kinds of care. So today we're going to gently unpack the difference between burnout and exhaustion, what each one feels like, why it matters, what's happening in the nervous system, and how we can begin moving toward recovery without shame or self-blame. We live in an exhausted culture. We are living in a culture that glorifies productivity, constant availability, and pushing through. Many people no longer ask, "How am I doing?" They ask, "How much can I get done?" And eventually the body starts speaking, sometimes softly and sometimes loudly. For some people, it shows up as brain fog or irritability, forgetfulness, low motivation, emotional numbness, or the sense that even simple things suddenly feel hard. And often people assume, I just need more sleep. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes the exhaustion is deeper than sleep. So let's start with exhaustion. Exhaustion is extreme tiredness, physical, emotional, mental, or all three at once. And most people experience exhaustion at some point. Maybe you've had a demanding work week, or several nights of poor sleep, extra emotional stress, illness, or caregiving responsibilities, too much travel, or too many obligations without enough recovery. Exhaustion is often the nervous system's way of saying, I need recovery. Common signs of exhaustion include feeling physically tired or sleepy, having trouble focusing clearly, slower thinking, irritability, low physical energy, and or mental fog. But one of the most important things about exhaustion is this: exhaustion usually improves with rest. When you slow down, sleep, hydrate, eat well, or reduce demands for a while, your system begins recovering. You may still feel tired, but there's movement towards restoration. It's like your battery is low, and it still recharges. For example, think about a teacher during finals week. They're grading papers late into the night, answering emails, managing students, and by Friday they feel completely wiped out. But after a quiet weekend of good sleep, time outside, and reduced demands, they begin feeling more like themselves again. That's exhaustion. So what is burnout then? Burnout is different. Burnout is deeper, more chronic, and more emotionally consuming. Burnout is not simply being tired. Burnout is emotional, mental, physical depletion caused by prolonged, unmanaged stress without enough recovery or support. And one of the key differences is this: rest alone does not fix burnout. It can sound like, I took time off and I still feel awful. I can't seem to recover. I don't even care anymore. Everything feels too heavy, or I feel disconnected from myself. And burnout affects energy, motivation, your emotional regulation, meaning, relationships, concentration, and identity. And it often creates cynicism, emotional numbness, hopelessness, a sense of detachment, irritability, feeling trapped, and the loss of joy. And all of these things matter deeply. Burnout is not weakness. It is a nervous system overload response. As an example, imagine a caregiver who has spent years taking care of everyone else. They manage work, aging parents, children, household responsibilities, emotional support for others, and they rarely allow themselves recovery. At first, they're just tired, but over time, they begin feeling emotionally flat, or small tasks begin to feel overwhelming. They stop enjoying things they once loved, and even rest feels unhelpful. That's often burnout beginning to emerge. From a nervous system perspective, exhaustion and burnout affect the body differently. Exhaustion happens when the body has used up energy, but burnout happens when stress response systems have been activated for too long without enough safety, recovery, or regulation. And I'm going to repeat that one because it's so important. Burnout happens when the stress response system has been activated for too long without enough safety, recovery, or regulation. The body then begins to conserve energy, and this is important. Sometimes burnout can look like laziness from the outside, but internally, the nervous system is overwhelmed and trying to survive. And this is why people in burnout often struggle with concentration, motivation, emotional regulation, memory, patience, and decision-making, because the brain essentially shifts into conservation mode. And because the nervous system stays activated, sleep often becomes less restorative. People may sleep, but they do not feel restored. Burnout has increased dramatically in recent years, and honestly, it makes sense. Many people are carrying financial stress, caregiving stress, emotional labor, unrealistic expectations of themselves and from others, chronic uncertainty, constant digital connection, and work without boundaries. We live like we are rechargeable all the time now. Because of phones, texts, emails, and notifications, and so the nervous system rarely has a chance to fully power down. And so many people quietly carry internal narratives like, I should be able to handle this, or I can't let people down, or rest is lazy, or I have to do everything perfectly, and even strong people don't ask for help. But those narratives can slowly drain us from the inside out. One reason burnout hurts so deeply is because it often affects our identity, especially for helpers, caregivers, professionals, parents, and people who pride themselves on being dependable. When your identity becomes tied to productivity or competence or taking care of everyone else, burnout can feel like, if I stop functioning, who even am I? And many people feel shame when they can't keep performing at the same level. So please hear this. Burnout is not a character flaw. It is often the accumulated cost of chronic overextension without enough support. And here's one of the simplest ways to think about it. Exhaustion says, I'm tired, but recovery helps. Burnout says, I am depleted and something deeper needs to change. So a few gentle questions you could ask yourself. Does rest noticeably help me? Do I feel emotionally numb or just physically tired? Am I still connected to meaning and joy? Do I dread things that once felt manageable? Or have I been pushing through for too long? And sometimes people experience both things simultaneously, exhaustion layered on top of burnout. So what helps? If exhaustion is the primary issue, the nervous system often responds well to recovery-based care, things like quality sleep, hydration, reducing commitments, gentle movements like going for a leisurely walk, slowing stimulation like getting off screens, taking time outside, eating nourishing food, and taking breaks before depletion hits. And honestly, some people simply just need permission to have rest without guilt. So what helps burnout then? Burnout recovery is deeper work, and it usually requires the following: boundaries, reducing chronic stressors, some emotional support, nervous system regulation, meaningful rest, reconnecting with things that brought you joy, reevaluating unsustainable expectations, and addressing perfection or overfunctioning. And sometimes therapy becomes incredibly important, not because something is wrong with you, but because your system has been carrying too much for too long. Healing for burnout often includes learning that your worth is not tied to your productivity, that rest is not weakness, and that saying no is sometimes necessary. And this one's very important, and that survival mode was never meant to become a lifestyle. That's right, survival mode was never meant to become a lifestyle. One of the mistakes many people make is waiting for a huge vacation or a complete life overhaul before allowing for recovery. But the nervous system heals through repeated moments of safety and restoration. Small moments really matter. A slow cup of coffee with a friend, a walk outside, music, laughter, stillness, connection, prayer, quiet, breathing deeply for 1 minute, putting the phone down, and saying no to one unnecessary thing. Honestly, tiny moments of regulation matter more than people realize. So let me leave you with this today. If you're tired, listen to that. If your body is asking for rest, that matters. If your nervous system feels overwhelmed, that deserves compassion. And if rest alone hasn't fixed what you're feeling, that doesn't mean you're failing. It may simply mean that your nervous system needs a different kind of care. Not pushing, not more guilt, and not more proving, but support, boundaries, recovery, and gentleness, because you were never designed to live in constant survival mode. Thank you for spending time with me today, and if this episode resonated with you, maybe share it with someone who's been carrying more than they realize. And as always, until next time, may you be kind to your heart, clear in your mind, and grounded in your purpose. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Heart, Mind, and Purpose. We hope this episode reminded you that exhaustion and burnout are not signs of weakness, but signals that something inside may need care, support, and restoration. If today's conversation encouraged you, consider sharing it with someone who also may be carrying more than they realize. And remember, slowing down long enough to listen to yourself is not falling behind. Sometimes it's the beginning of healing. As always, you can find resources, listener handouts, and more at dawnmariehill.com/heart. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode as we keep exploring how the heart, the mind, and our sense of purpose all work together for a life well lived. If you have questions or comments, please contact Dawn at heartmindandpurpose.podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.